Hello everyone and welcome to the Honeybee Stamps YouTube channel. My name is Kelly and normally at this time we have a crafting live stream. I'm away spending time with my kiddos and so I hope you enjoy the videos that I've put together for this week. Okay, tonight I'm going to be creating different backgrounds with our brand new 3D embossing folders and the Simon Hurley stamping foam. So I have our Tall Trees 3D embossing folder and also our wood grain. I've pulled out some watercolor paper, but I'm going to pull out some craft cardstock as well. And I'm just going to have a lot of fun adding great texture to that stamping foam and different kinds of ink. So I'm going to use regular distress ink and then also use some distress oxide ink. Now, the fun thing about this stamping foam is really you can press it into anything, paper towels, stencils, anything like that, but I've never tried it with a 3D embossing folder to get all that great detail. So I'm going to heat up the foam. Anytime you want to change the design that you're stamping with and make the foam smooth again, all you have to do is heat it up and whatever design you have previously used will pop back out and it will become smooth again. So after I heat this up with my heat tool and move it around really well, I am going to press really firmly because I want to get all that beautiful detail of that embossing folder into that stamp. I'm going to press really firmly all the way around. That way I get the most even coverage of that design. You can see I'm pressing my thumbs towards the bottom and my fingers towards the top. And what I have discovered and what is so cool about this is if you use one side of the embossing folder, you're going to get all the details or the positive of that design. If you flip it over and use the other side, it's going to stamp the negative or what's in the background, what's behind the trees. And so let's ink this up and let's see what we get with that side of the embossing folder that we use. So this time I'm going in with just regular distress ink. This is Rustic Wilderness. This is my very most favorite color of green. And you can see what we're going to get here. We're going to get the negative space. So you can see in between the trees, in between the little branches. So that's what I'm going to call the negative here. Just like when we talk about die cuts and you have what you've die cut out and then you can use the negative space, we're going to do the same thing with the stamping foam. Now I have gently misted this with water just to kind of activate that ink and make sure it's nice and juicy. I'm going to place this down and line it up the best I can on a piece of watercolor paper, and then I'm going to press all the way around and really let that ink seep in to that paper. And then I want to lift pretty much straight off of the paper. That way I don't get any drips or anything like that. And you can see what we get there. The trees are left in white or whatever color the paper is, and then all the negative space or the background is what was inked up on that stamping foam. And so depending on which side of that embossing folder you use, determine what gets stamped onto your paper. So let's try this again. I just have inked it up, spritzed it with water, and there was so much residual ink left on that. You can really do a double stamping and just use up all that ink. And so let's see what we get after I press this in really well, let it all seep into the paper. And then you see we just get a lighter, more muted out version of what we got the first time. So pretty and so fun is this kind of like faux watercolor design. Okay, so let's keep moving on here. So I'm going to clean up that stamping foam and I'm just using a damp cloth, and you can really scrub that down and make sure you get it cleaned really well because nothing's really going to mess up that design until you reheat it. So you can see I'm taking my heat tool to it again, and that design is going to pop back out. You can see it getting softer there. So I'm just going to hold the heat over it and move it around until all that becomes smooth again. Now, for this time, I'm going to use the other side of that embossing folder so we get a totally different look. We're going to be getting the positive, or actually stamping the trees this time. So now I have my warmed up foam, and I am taking it to the other side of that embossing folder this time, and again applying lots of pressure so that design really gets pressed into that stamping foam. Pick it up, and now you can see that we've got all the details of those trees. So let's ink this up and let's see what we get this time. I'm going to take another piece of watercolor paper and then some more inks. Let's do multiple colors of greens this time. And I'm just going to smush these around directly onto the stamping foam. So I'm taking an olive green, and then we'll take some rustic wilderness and kind of fill on in there. And then I'm going to take mowed lawn as well. Now, when using these ink pads to ink up the stamping foam, I do take kind of the corner, or I tilt it and ink the stamping foam up with the sides. You can see I'm kind of holding it and tilting it to fit into those nooks and crannies. Now, it will mix your ink just a little bit. That's doesn't bother me. You can always kind of brush that away or make it kind of come off the top of your ink pad. I'm holding it to the side of my desk and spritzing it with water. And then I am going to let that water kind of run down. You can see I'm shaking it down. I'm letting all those colors mix together on the foam. When I'm ready and I'm kind of liking the way that the little drips and everything are moving, I'm going to press that onto the watercolor paper. Now it looks like I'm pressing really hard, but I am not. I'm just making sure that I get even coverage all the way around. And then here is what that looks like when we have just the positive space, or just the trees. Now I have residual ink left over, so I have spritzed it again. I'm going to let all those little drips and runs run down the stamping foam. I'm even holding it up to let it all drip down and kind of blend together, and then I'll flip it over, and then we'll get a second stamping with the first inking. So you're really getting a lot of bang for your buck here with this ink, and ooh, I like this one. This is really moody, really fun. You can see where that kind of olive green has really dripped down in there. Okay, so let's clean it up again, and let's play some more with these embossing folders, the stamping foam, and some ink. Okay, so I'm going to leave the same impression. So the one that we did with the positive side that's going to stamp those trees, and I'm going to do a more wintry background this time. So I have broken china and tumbled glass, which are pale blues, but I think this would be beautiful for around the holidays. And again, I'm swiping those ink pads directly over the foam. I'm going to hold it off on the side of my desk to spritz it with water. And I'm going to hold this up just like we did before and kind of let those two colors kind of mesh and run together just a little bit. Now I'm reaching over on the side of my desk and I'm grabbing some cardstock because I've already gone through all of my pretty watercolor paper. And I actually am taking one of the backgrounds that I already stamped onto watercolor paper. I flipped it over, and this is what we get. So this really fun, like light blue mix of those wintry looking trees. I love that those colors mix together there at the top. And these are going to be beautiful with some type of wintry, snowy sentiment, something like that. And so again, I'm flipping over those papers. I don't think I was crazy about that olive green color, and so I decided to use the backside because, the ink didn't run through or anything. I'm inking up a little bit more of that lighter blue towards the top. I'm going to mist that off the side of my desk again, and then we're going to put that down. I'm letting those colors really drip and run together. You can see those running right down the trunks of the trees. So cool. And then I love the way that these turned out. They almost look like a wintry scene with maybe like the Northern Lights or something like that. I think it's really pretty with a holiday sentiment. I love those. It looked like they're just kind of smooshed on there with the little watercolory tree look. Okay, so let's clean off our stamping foam again. And this time I'm going to use Distress Oxide ink, which dries in a more chalky look than the regular Distress inks. And I am going to stamp onto craft cardstock. I'm pulling out some card bases that I have that are just top folding, and I'm going to stamp one on either end, and then I can kind of slice these up. So I'm going to swipe over Rustic Wilderness. Again, this is my most favorite green. And this again is the oxide ink. And I'm really tamping that down. You can see I'm still using what I'm calling the positive of that embossing folder, which is the design of the trees. I'm letting the water kind of do its thing and get into the nooks and crannies there on that ink. And then I'm going to place this down and stamp it. And then let's pick it up and see what we get. Ooh, I just love that on the craft cardstock. What a beautiful background. I'm going to flip it over and I can use the residual ink, or I can ink it up with some different colors. So this time I am taking a bundled sage, which is a much lighter green. I'm going to spritz it again with water to get that bundled sage kind of activated. And I'm going to allow the rustic wilderness to kind of drip into that. And then I'm really experimenting here. I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. I'm taking a dry paintbrush and I'm dragging that rustic wilderness, which is the darker green, down into the bundled sage. So really you can play with this and get the mixes that you want. You can manipulate the ink once it's on your background, and look at that. I love that. Look how it's darker at the top and then it fades down into that lighter bundled sage towards the bottom. So I'm going to set that card base aside and let's play again. So I'm going to wipe this down and let's see what we get next. Okay, let's heat up that stamping foam again and let's use our wood grain embossing folder. So I have my stamping foam all nice and smooth, get it really nice and warm so it really takes on the design of that embossing folder. And then just like we did with the trees, I'm going to flip it over and I am going to press it into place. You can see I'm trying to apply even pressure here. I got to put my heat tool down, and then I'm going to press all that great wood grain design into that stamping foam. Pick it up, and then you can see all the little ridges, the knots, the little swirls that are in that wood grain embossing folder. Now, this would be the positive side. So when we add ink to this and stamp it down, we're going to get the design of the wood grain, not what is in the background. So let's just do a classics first. You're going to see that design really pop out as I add this brown Distress Oxide ink onto the background. We're going to do just like what we did with the others. I'm going to lightly spritz it to the side of my desk with some water, let it kind of seep into that ink, and then flip it over, and then we will stamp it down. This is a really fun way to get more use out of our 3D embossing folders. Look at that stamped wood grain background. Look at all the swirls in the wood. I just love this. What a great background for masculine cards, for sympathy cards. This would even be really beautiful with a lovely layers floral on top, because everything looks good with wood grain, right? Okay, we're going to clean it up and let's do a different color. So this time I'm going to do a blue wood grain. Let's see how it turns out. We're kind of experimenting here this evening. And so I'm just going to choose one of the blue inks and we're going to apply that directly onto the stamping foam, just like what we did the others. Let's do Faded Jeans. It's kind of a washed out, almost smoky funky, hazy looking blue. I'm going to cover it all over the top. We're going to spritz it with water again, and then we will stamp it down. So I like to hold the stamping foam off to the side of my desk. That way, just, the water doesn't mist onto the paper or get somewhere else on my desk. And so that's why I kind of hold it off to the side. Okay, so we've got a funky wood grain with the blue. So I'm going to clean this up here, and then we're going to get moving on with all these beautiful backgrounds. Okay, one thing I want to do before moving on and trimming these backgrounds down to get them ready for cards is I want to take my heat tool and make sure that they are nice and dry. And we're going to get a look here at all the pretty backgrounds that we've made. So you can see the wood grains there, the blue forest, and then we have our really pretty greens. And here you're getting a look at that negative space back there that's stamped in between the leaves and in between the trees. And then here is the positive where it actually stamped the details of the trees. So we're going to get these all nice and dry. And then I'm going to cut these down with my trimmer to prepare them to go onto card bases. Okay, the only thing that I need to do to prepare these to go onto card bases is trim them down. I'm going to trim them down. I'm going to trim about 1/8 of an inch off of each side, trying to keep whatever I have stamped towards the center. And I am going to make several of these into cards on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central. So I hope you come back and join me then. Again, we're kind of deviating from our regular live stream because I am away with my kiddos, but I hope you will come back Wednesday and let's see how we can make these pretty backgrounds that we've used our 3D embossing folders and the stamping foam and some pretty inks into cards. All right, I'll see you Wednesday. Thanks for joining me, and bye-bye.